Hey friends, Peggy Hall back with you from thehealthyamerican.org. Today is Monday. It's May 5th, 2025. You might hear my little puppy dog there. She's chewing on a toy. So that's in the background. I told you that I was going to be going to the DMV to turn in my real ID. Let's talk about that and what happened. For those of you who don't know, the real ID is a basically a federal, it is a document that you are required, or so we're told, to have based on a law that was passed in 2005. So 20 years ago, a law was passed by the federal government stating that each state had to have certain standards in order to issue their driver's licenses. Now, I have covered this in a couple of previous videos. In this video, I'm going to tell you exactly how to avoid that real ID. I'm going to tell you why that's important. Even if you have one, you can still go to try to turn it in like I did. And what is the difference between a passport and a real ID? And can you fly, even though today is May 5th, can you fly May 7th without your real ID? So I don't know, I got something going on here. Can you close that door, please? And we're streaming live, and that's what happens when we're streaming live. Okay, I think my husband's trying to help the dog, but she's fine. All right, let's get back to the video, shall we? Okay, what is a real ID? Well, Christy Nome is going to tell you what that is. So let me share my screen. You might want to have your vomit bucket ready. And well, let me just play this and you'll see for yourself. All right, here we go.
Real ID is being enforced is because it's a federal law. Joe Biden kicked the can to May 7th, and this Real ID is going to just empower the states to make sure we're checking people's residences, their current legal status.
We're checking people's residences. All right. Let me know what you think about them apples. I've had a driver's license for, I don't know, 40 plus years. I'm not counting how many years. And what is this federal government checking your residence? That doesn't make sense to me. Let's just rewind a little bit and remember that each state has its own lawmaking capacities. That's why the laws related to driver's licenses in California are different than in Nevada or New York or Florida or Georgia or Texas or North Carolina. Every state makes its own laws regarding the bang bangs, also regarding the IDs, driver's license, or if you don't drive, you could have an ID from your state. So first of all, this concept that the federal government can tell the states what to do in terms of issuing a driver's license is completely unconstitutional. Now she's saying that the federal government wants to check your residence. That has nothing to do with the federal government. If you are a resident and a citizen of the state where you live, and yes, when you get your driver's license, you give them your residential address, but that should not be something that the federal government has. So let's listen to that again. This is very chilling and horrifying, actually.
People's residences, their current legal status. The states to make sure we're checking people's residences, their current legal status will be verified. We're going to make sure that people who are getting social security numbers in this country aren't voting in states. The states have the power and the information to ensure election integrity. And here at the federal level, that information is not going to be any biometric information. It'll just allow people to get an ID that they should be on our planes. They should be people that are United States residencies, and that legal status will be checked. So it'll allow us to get more information to states so that they're making sure that they're protecting their election laws as well.
Okay.
It's amazing what.
So that they're protecting their election laws as well. So here's what probably is going to happen. That real ID is going to become a national ID. Now, you may not be as old as I am, but I grew up in a country where we were very proud of not having a national ID card, that we were not going to be checked and tracked and targeted by the federal government. So the federal government telling the states that they have to have these standards for the driver's license. What difference does it make if I have a driver's license that was issued by my state? Why do I have to have one that the federal government has approved of? It has a little star in the corner. Then she goes on to say that, oh, we're not going to take your biometrics. That's exactly what they do. They take your fingerprint, they take your photo, and who knows what they're doing with that photo. Maybe they're scanning your irises or something at that point. I did a video previously, and many of you have written to me saying that when you got your passport photo taken, you could not smile. One woman said that she had to show her ears so that they could do that biometric capture. So you're telling me that for all these years that I was able to fly from California to, from Los Angeles to San Francisco. I haven't flown to San Francisco. Let's say Los Angeles to Tennessee. And I flew on my Costco card because I did not have my driver's license with me. You're telling me that somehow that was unsafe, that somehow your old, natural, normal driver's license that is issued by your state, that has already done its due diligence in determining your address, you're telling me that driver's license is not safe enough for you to fly. So you're telling me that criminals, not that I believe in any of these hijackings or anything anyway, because, yeah, people are definitely carrying bombs in their underwear and shoes. And I know that whole TSA is theater to make people feel as though they are safe. So many of you told me that you don't fly anymore anyway, and that's their intended goal. They don't want you to fly. They don't want you to leave your state. They don't want you to leave your home. That's why they came out with this disease, this mystery disease, and you were supposed to stay home, and many people did. And now they don't want you to fly. So they're making flying so burdensome, so onerous that you don't want to go through it. Now, in a previous video that I replayed, I did talk about the TSA pre-check that I went through because I didn't want to go through that cancer booth, that screening booth that you have to hold your hands up like you're some criminal. Stop, don't shoot, as if this X-ray machine can't see through, that you have to hold your hands up because it can't see through you. I mean, the whole thing is ridiculous. And then I didn't want to be groped. I don't want to, but the other choice was to go through the metal detector. So I went through the TSA pre-check. Come to find out, it's the same company that is issuing these real IDs. And it doesn't really matter, friends, because the driver's license has been issued by the same company for over 60 years in all of the states. They are the leading, my understanding, it's all of the states. They are the leading provider of driver's license in all of the states. And this is a company that's in France. I did a whole video on that. So it's likely they already have that information. So you're going to say, well, Peggy, what's the big deal then? Why should I opt out of this real ID? And can I opt out of it? Well, the big deal is more and more of us need to stand up and show a percentage of people that are not going along with it. I don't have another way of standing up other than through my own action. Now, I am going to share with you a website and also a blog post where Healthy American has taken the information that I shared in a video and she augmented it and added to it. And I'm going to share that with you in just a moment. And at the end of the video, I'll share with you a website that does have some additional steps. But the difference between a real ID and your normal driver's license is, first of all, I don't like that it's called real ID. Why can't they just call it real driver's license? Why is it being called an ID? I don't have an ID card. I have a driver's license. And many of you, rightly so, have told me that you have a right to travel without having a driver's license. And many of you don't go and comply with that anyway. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and put that on the record. I have one. It's a driver. It even says driver license. Currently, my ID, my driver license in the state of Florida, which is where I am now, that has a little star in the corner. And that demonstrates or indicates that it is a real ID. Now, it looks like a normal driver's license. It says driver license on it. It's funny, it doesn't say driver's license. It says driver license on that. And it doesn't say national ID. It doesn't say real ID. So I reject the whole concept that it's even called real ID. So what I did in my previous video, and I want to thank all of you, Sandy, I want to thank all of you who took some of these steps that I recommended on how to avoid the real ID. Let me share that with you. And then I'll share with you what happened to me today when I went to the DMV. So first of all, you don't get one. You just go to your DMV and you say, I just want a state ID. I don't want, or state driver license. I want a regular driver's license. I don't want the real ID. And this is important because we want to increase the number of people that are rejecting this intrusion into our privacy, into our freedom, and into our rights. The federal government does not have the authority to interject itself into these state issues. If it's not spelled out in the Constitution, it is delegated to the states. There's nothing in the Constitution about you having a driver license, and that is left to the states. You can get a passport. Now, people have said, well, wait a minute, Peggy, what's the difference between having a passport or a real ID? I'm going to be tracked either way. Well, you're probably right. But the difference is this. You don't need a passport to travel from Florida to New York, or from California to Tennessee, or from Los Angeles to San Francisco. You don't need a passport in order to do that. You only need a passport to fly internationally, to fly to a different country. And it's the other country that is requiring you to have that passport so you can have entry. Now, there are a couple of arrangements. In the United States, we have a card, an enhanced card, I believe it's called, where you can, or a passport card, not a passport book, and you can travel to Canada and Mexico and you just show a card like an ID card. It's not an entire passport book. So I have a passport book, and yes, I'm sure it has an RFID chip and all of that. But here's the difference. It doesn't have my personal address listed on it. The real ID has your residential address listed on it. I don't care for that. Also, the federal government has the legal authority to issue passports. They have that authority because it has to do with Title 22 of the U.S. Code of Regulations that oversees international travel. Never in the entire United States has there ever been, which is why I was saying I'm shocked at this stage of the game, that you had to have a national ID in order to travel from state to state. Now, it's true, you did have your driver's license or other form of ID. There are dozens, well, maybe a dozen other forms of ID that you could use. You might have a military ID. You might have, well, there's a list that I shared with you in a previous video. The simplest for most of us is to travel on your passport. So if you like, you can turn in your real ID in a state that still has the regular driver's license. Now, you can get the word out to others like I'm doing in these videos. You can share this video. You can tell your representatives that you do not want this. You go to refuserealid.org, and I'm going to share that with you in just a moment. Now, the other thing is you don't comply with those facial scanners at the airport. Now, some of you have said that you were traveling from another country into the United States, or from the United States into another country. And when you got to this other country, to Japan or Germany or Korea or wherever you went, it was not optional. They scanned your face, or you had to have a QR code, and that was how you entered the country. I have no control over the laws of other countries. I have very little information about the laws in other countries. I have no power or authority over the laws in other countries. I'm only speaking about the United States. And sadly, those individuals never stood up against it. They probably don't have a constitution like ours. I know they don't, that safeguards their freedom like ours is supposed to. So when you're leaving a country and you're going through the passport line, the Customs and Border Patrol, they might be taking a picture of you without your consent. There might not even be a customs agent there. You might be doing everything through a computerized program. And I'm sorry if that's what you're going through, and that's just something you need to know. And I and you don't really have any ability to push back against that I know of. If you have other information, please share that with me so I can share it with others. When it comes to the United States, if you are traveling from Florida to California, as I have done on a plane, you're going to go up to the TSA, you're going to hand them your passport or your driver's license as I have done in the past. And there's going to be a camera. And I step aside from the camera and I say, no, thank you. And I use that phrase, no, thank you. You can say, I opt out. I don't want it. Another phrase I have said is that's voluntary, and I'm not volunteering. I want to say it out loud so that other people hear me in the line. So I'm opting out for myself. I'm opting out to educate the TSA agent. And I will actually say, you know, you're going to be out of a job soon if everybody does the camera. I will say that to them. And that's not threatening or anything. You can say that. And then for the people behind me and around me, I want them to hear. In fact, I've got an idea for a t-shirt. And on the back of the t-shirt, it will have one of those circles with a slash through it with a biometric scan. And it will say, just say no to the facial scan. You have the right to opt out. And it can be on the back of your t-shirt or sweatshirt, and you can wear that, and people behind you can see that in line. I want to make that t-shirt. I want to wear that t-shirt. I want to educate people to let them know that that's one way that we can stand up. Now you'll say, Peggy, there's already cameras in the airport. Exactly. If there's already cameras in the airport, why do I need to stand in front of that one? What say you? And I would say that to the TSA person as well. The difference is I'm not willingly going and standing in front of that. I'm making a stand, and it might be, I don't even know if it's effective, but it's something that I can do, and I will do it. The other thing that I recommended that you can do is to not get this real ID. And you can say, I don't believe in a national ID. I would like a driver's license, please. Many of you wrote to me. I am just applauding all of you in, let's see, we had Arizona, and we had, I think it was Georgia and North Carolina, and I think it was Texas. Now, you told me and you wrote to me, and I'm so glad that you did, that you went back and you told the person at the window, I want to turn this in and I want to get a regular driver's license. And they made you pay the $20 or what have you. And you educated them. And most of the time they said things like, why would you want to do that? Or that's silly, or you already have one. They don't even understand how important this is. And I'm going to share that with you in just a moment. When I share this blog in terms of other ways that they're going to be using this real ID. Now, we pushed back against it. We collectively, many of us, years ago, which is why this law was passed in 2005, 20 years ago. They tried to get it going in 2017, 2018, and then it was supposed to be in effect in 2023. And I did a video on this channel talking about the real ID being paused and that it would come into effect in 2025. And that is supposed to take effect in a couple of days. I would love to find out if any of you are traveling, if you go on your regular driver's license, what happens? If it were me, I would do that. I almost wanted to just like book a flight like an hour away so that I could go to the airport with a regular driver's license. But guess what happened? Let me come off the screen share. Guess what happened? So I could not find the information on the Florida website. In fact, I did find something. Let me show you what I found. And amazingly, Florida they're like all in. They're like 100% on board with the real ID. This is the Florida Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles. So basically, this is their DMV page. Countdown to May 7th. 1 day, 2 hours, 21 minutes. So they're getting all excited. Now look at how this is presented. And it's very, very important that we look at every word. Countdown to May 7th, 2025, real ID enforcement. So enforcement, that's a different word than requirement. It's a different word than law. I don't even see the word law here anyway. What it says is the Federal Real ID Act of 2005 sets new standards for the issuance of driver licenses and ID cards. The Real ID Act became effective nationwide. So I don't know. I need to dig into this a little bit more. In 2008, Florida began issuing real ID compliant credentials after January 1st, 2010. The new credentials have a star in the upper right corner. This is a motorcycle card, as shown in the sample license on the right. Florida is a real ID compliant state, and all Florida licenses should be accepted nationwide. So here's another one. I did not see anywhere on here where it says that it is required. Look at the language that they're using. They're compliant. The licenses should be accepted. They began issuing the compliant credentials. There are new standards. I'm really skeptical about this. The Department of Homeland Security announced that enforcement of Real ID credentials will begin in a measured, fair, and responsible way. So here we go. That started back in 2014. I don't even know if they ever actually enforced that. And that now here we've got it boarding a federally regulated commercial aircraft, which means if you've got a private plane, I don't. I wish I did. You don't need to have that at all. In fact, you don't have to go through TSA either. I did fly in a private plane once, many, many years ago, as a guest to a client that I had, and it was wonderful. No pat downs, none of that. I did show an ID, but I did not have to go through TSA. So they've got all of the information here. So I could not find on that page whether or not they still have regular driver's licenses. It's kind of hard to say. So I went in person, and in my previous video, I told you I was right in. There's no line. I walked right in. Somebody at the counter, and I said, "Does Florida still have regular driver's licenses or just the Real ID?" And his spiel came out, and he said, this was passed by the federal government and it goes into effect on May 7th. And I said, I understand that. I actually have one. My question is, can I turn it in and get a regular one? And he kind of hemmed and hawed a little bit. And he said, no, you just keep the one that you have. And I said, what if I want to turn it in? He said, no, all Florida driver's license are the Real ID. Now, you know me, I don't give up easily. So tomorrow I'm going to go to a different office and I'm going to ask and find out their answer, because I've done that in the past. When I was dealing with the TSA, I got different answers from two different places that I went to when I was doing that pre-check. So it is possible that Florida no longer has a regular license. And because I established the residency here for reasons that you can probably guess, yes, the state of California is still trying to get its greedy claws into me. And I don't like my tax dollars going to support all of the heinous, unconstitutional laws that are in California. So that was a big reason of creating a residency here. I am still back and forth between the states. If you're interested about my decision making and all of that, watch my playlist called Florida. And I talk all about that if you are interested. And you need to do what's right for you. I am fighting for every state. I am fighting for California, for New York, for Connecticut, for Florida, for every state in the country. That's why it's called the Healthy American. In fact, I am more effective being in Florida because I'm not operating under a hostile, oppressive, tyrannical government. And I'm also not under physical threat and danger like I was in California. I'm not going to speak any more about that, but I think you can understand where I'm coming from. So let's take a look now at the information that I want to share with you from let's take a look at some of your comments as well. And then I'll share the blog post of where this might be going. Let me know in a comment where you think this is going. Do you think they're just going to stop at boarding a plane and getting into a federal building? Do you think this is going to be required for voter ID, which I am opposed to on a national level? Each state has the state authority to determine voting practices. It should not be federalized. It should be relegated to the states. The more of a centralized government, the more problems. The more local, the better. All right. Leslie says, thanks, Peggy. They're now trying to pass a bill that makes the Real ID mandatory for voting. I think that's extreme. And it now makes me realize that all these illegals, particularly the gang members, are being used to push the surveillance agenda, just like I showed you with that Kristi Noem video where she's, prior to that, she was talking about all, the illegals. So you're telling me that criminals are going to comply with this law. You don't think that they can't get a fake ID and put a little star in the corner. Now, I'm not saying I ever did anything like that when I was a teenager, but did all y'all remember the fake IDs back in the day? I mean, you could buy one for a few dollars, I think, from somebody. So who knows? She writes, Trump has militarized our border. Is it to keep illegals out or to keep us in? all in the name of safety. And you know how they use that as a ruse. Here's another one, Marcelina. I totally agree with this, Peggy. At this point, it is also very easy to opt out of the eye scans. The more people who choose to do that will contribute to strengthening our right to continue to do so. I have a question about passports. Do those also include some sort of chip that we are not aware of? Yes, they probably do have an RFID chip. Now, I'm not recommending this, but I did hear a pastor talk about putting it in the microwave oven for 2 seconds or 3 seconds. I haven't done that. I don't have a microwave, but that is something to consider. Now, again, a passport, the federal government has the authority to require a passport for you to travel overseas. There was never any requirement for you to have a passport to travel between states or even within the state. And that's the direction they're moving in. How to avoid the real ID. All right. This is the website. It's called Citizens Council for Health Freedom, cchfreedom.org. I have linked it in my Substack, and this is all about how to refuse the national ID card, the real ID. It's horrible that we are going to be tracked and traced, and probably for our medical status as well. And not only being tracked and traced, but being refused certain services. Imagine going to travel. I want to go back to Orange County, and I get on I go to the airport and I give them my real ID, and they say, well, you're not compliant. Like, what do you mean I'm not compliant? Well, you are at risk. You're a danger to others because you are not a human pincushion. Is that possible? Let's take a look. All right, here's the real ID, the deadlines. And what I wanted to share with you was oh gosh, let me come off the screen share. I wanted to share with you this. Oh, here we go. This is the blog post from A Healthy American. And I'm so grateful for Roseanne. She also has a lot of great articles here about your friend and mine, Bob Kennedy. Yes, and his inconsistencies. I'll be polite about it today. This is called Nature of Healing. And this is the blog post. So she has used some of my information and also added to it. This image, I believe, was taken from Idemia, which is the company that is pushing this, the real ID and more. So are you real ID ready? And the reason why we want to refuse it is because it is a threat to privacy. It is an unfunded mandate that will cost billions of dollars to implement, including higher license fees. Let me know in a comment, last time you got your driver's license, how much you paid for it, and do you have the real ID or not? And more than that, the digital ID is a tool to connect everyone to the Internet of Things. So I will leave a link for you to read more in her blog post if you are interested. And again, it's important because we don't want to be connected. I don't want to be connected to the Internet of Things. I don't really understand that all that much, but I know that I don't want to be a part of it. So let's take a look here at your comments, friends. Thanks for being on board. If you take a moment, if you're in the live chat, you have to click out of the chat and then give the video a thumbs up. And that helps with the algorithm because we are trying to make sure that we can outwit the nitwits here on YouTube and get as many eyeballs in front of my videos as possible. Love and Truth said that she tried to return the driver's license with the real ID and they refused to let me. You know what? I think it's important that we go anyway. Here's the way I look at it. I went and spoke to this man today. He probably has never had anybody. Well, I don't know. I am in Florida. Maybe someone has done so. But I'm probably one of the very few. I should have asked him. That's the question to ask. When you go say, how many people have refused the real ID? Ask. I would love to know that. And I'm probably the only one in this little DMV. It's a small little one. I walk right in that's ever come in and said, I don't want it. So imagine now he's probably thinking, I wonder why she doesn't want it. Should I not want it too? Hey, you guys, what's with this real ID? Should we not want it? Somebody came in today and they wanted to turn it in. You see? That's what I can do. Maybe I personally can't overturn the mandate or whatever. I hate to use that word, but I can plant these seeds. I can have conversations. And I'm going to go to a different DMV tomorrow. And I'm going to ask them the same question. And I'm going to ask them how many people have asked to not participate. And is there a way that I can opt out? And that is an action that I can take. So I think it's important that we go, even if we are refused. Okay. Let's see. Jesse James, I only roll with fake IDs, not real ones. I love that. Kim B says, check my residence for what? Exactly. Why should Christy Nome be checking my residence for anything? This is an invasion of our privacy. You know what, friends? Over these last few years, well, I would say one of the things that bothered me the most, oh, so many things have bothered me. Let me know what bothered you the most. Here's what it is. The governors telling people to stay home, to cover their faces, to close their businesses, and to become a human pincushion. Now, you may disagree with me on those choices. They are choices. But you can't disagree with the fact that the governor has zero authority to tell you what to do. This is the biggest issue of all for me. Coupled with that was this notion that we were sick and we had to prove ourselves healthy. What does that mean? Well, some of you underwent the nasal swab assault. You felt you had to as an accommodation to keep your job without the jab. Maybe you were curious and you didn't know that those were things that you wanted to stay away from. Maybe in the beginning you fell for all the hogwash, all the propaganda, and maybe you were coerced or intimidated or threatened and you complied with that stuff. The point is, we were told that we were sick and we didn't even know it, and that we had to prove ourselves healthy. That's no different than the government telling you that you are guilty and you have to prove yourself innocent. Drop a comment and let me know what's wrong with that statement. And I hope that you know what's wrong with it. There are probably young adults and children, or people who would know about this, who don't know because they've been told so often over the last several years that you have to prove yourself innocent. You have to prove yourself healthy. You have to prove yourself not sick. That's the exact wrong thing. We are assumed innocent in this country unless proven guilty. I don't even like the until proven guilty, because maybe we're not guilty. Innocent unless proven guilty. We are healthy unless, and there's no law against being sick anyway, so that's not even where I want to take it. But the point was the brainwashing to make people believe that you had to prove your innocence. That's what this Real ID is all about. That going on an airplane, you have to prove that you're not a threat to that airplane by taking off your shoes, by taking off your jacket, by walking through that cancer radiation screen. You dig into that if you don't know about that. Dig into who owns that and who made money on that. Not every country has that. Why should I have my privacy be infringed upon just because I'm flying on a plane? How many people does a plane carry? 500? Roughly, I'm just going to use that number, 500. How many cars are on the road on any given day? Now, driving in a car is hazardous. Flying in a plane is hazardous. Why should I and everyone else have to go through this charade of proving that we are not a threat to anybody else on that plane? I'm not in favor of it. I would rather take my chances. I know there are people that argue with me. I would rather be safe. Safety is the enemy of liberty and freedom. You've chosen differently. I've chosen freedom. So I'm not in favor of this ID. I'm not in favor of having to prove that I'm not dangerous. I'm not in favor of having to prove that I'm not sick. This is the slippery slope. And the slippery slope is sick. And that's why I've been speaking out against this for years. And I will never stop, whether I'm in California or Florida or Timbuktu. So I will continue to speak out against this tyranny. What is tyranny? It is the taking of power without authority. And this is why so many people are rightly concerned about Trump's executive orders. Now, there will be those who say, Peggy, Biden had plenty of executive orders. I'm against those as well. Obama did, Clinton did, the Bushes did. That's not the way our country is founded. That is not the political system of our country. We have a lawmaking body, which is the Congress and the Senate. And it is their job, it is their authority, it is their duty to actually go through these bills and have debate and have public input and modify them and improve on them and pass them through the two houses, and then they're signed into law by the president, who can also veto, but the veto can be overturned with 2/3 of a vote. But the point is that the executive branch doesn't have lawmaking authority. They brainwashed all y'all into not you smart ones, into thinking that they did, because the governor and the mayor and the health officer were issuing all these edicts that we had to follow. That's not how our government works. Now, you may say, well, Trump has to cut through all the red tape. Well, think that through all the way through. Because if he's just going to cut through the red tape and there's no law that underpins these actions, he's going to be gone in a little more than 4.5 years, which means the next president is going to undo all that stuff with his own executive orders. That's not how this country operates. The part of the slow moving nature of the government is because it offers stability, and we don't have these coups and the upsets and these ups and downs, that it's a stable, relatively predictable place to live and to do business and to invest and to raise your families and to thrive. That's what we want. So there are many that are rightly questioning this flurry of executive orders that are being challenged in court. And I would venture to say that the administration knew that would happen. It goes along with that old saying of, do it first and then ask for forgiveness later. I don't think Trump's asking for forgiveness, but you try to get away with it and see if you can get away with it without being caught. So unfortunately, that's a lot of what is going on here. I don't care for the expanded authority of the executive branch. That's in opposition to our political system of government. So this concept of having to prove your innocence, I'm not in favor of. Why didn't Trump get rid of this? If he's getting rid of all this other stuff, why didn't Doge this? Why didn't they cut the TSA? That's something I would be in favor of. Instead, it's getting stricter. And we're being told because it's for our safety. Oh, and for a convenience, so you don't have to wait in line so long at the TSA. Oh, yeah, I'm sure they care about us waiting in line so long. Friends, I'm kind of losing my voice here. There are so many great comments. RD said, I'm in California. I renewed last year with a regular license for $40. No real ID. If I need to travel, I'll use my passport. You know what? I want people to try to go. Why don't you have your driver's license and your passport and just see if you can get on a plane with your regular license? I bet they're going to let you do it. Okay. Let's see. Mary says, I'll get my license renewal next February. I won't get the ID. I will opt out from getting it. And I will tell them, thanks for covering this again, Peggy. You are so welcome. Ain't Buying It. I like that name. Says, because we are in a time when good is bad and bad is good, and cognitive dissonance is the norm. Of course, cognitive dissonance is where people believe things because they were told that, or it was their experience. But then when remember, facts are not debatable. They are in alignment with reality, and reality is not something that you can change. You have to face it, and we have to face the facts and the evidence and the proof. And when people are confronted with facts that are in opposition to what they believed, that's called cognitive dissonance, and they don't see it. They won't see it. They can't see it until they are willing to actually be intellectually and emotionally mature enough to say, you know what? I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to grow. I'm willing to admit that I was wrong. And I'm happy to do so. And I'm happy to do so. I would rather admit that I was wrong and that I had the wool pulled over my eyes than to keep having the wool pulled over my eyes. But there are people who are not willing to do that. They don't want to believe that they were wrong, that somebody duped them. So they continue to be duped. All right. Guilt, Jackie Jack says guilty until proven innocent in the Bay Area, Peggy. It's so sad. We have to continue to push back against that. Okay, Kirk said, DMV said, I couldn't return the star ID and get a regular license. I can't go back once it's issued. It was Indiana. they call it BMV. I guess that's the Board of Motor Vehicles, says you can't revert back. You know what, Kirk? I'm glad that you did that. That is an important action anyway. Maybe this will be overturned one day. I want you to go to refuserealid.org and you can find out more about that. All right. So many great comments. I will keep reading these. Falbo wants to know, is the enhanced ID just as bad as the real ID? I don't know that much about the enhanced ID. I will look into that and let you know. RDC that said that would be an interesting experiment. I prefer the train at this point. Probably you're going to need it on the train. You might need it to go to the doctor. If you are on, maybe you need it for your Social Security or your Medicare or anything else that you are getting from the government on any kind of support. And we need to keep speaking out against it. I think it does make a difference. Now, in Orange County, so many of us spoke out against these passports for the cocktails, and they sort of let that go. We spoke out about the suffocation devices, and the very next day, they pushed back and said that is, or they pulled back and they said that's no longer going to be required, but it's going to be strongly recommended. And they probably are pushing it out, but we need more and more people to speak out against it. So Preacher Man says, I've been looking for alternatives to the real ID in my state for 25 years. Now I need a driver's license, sincere religious conviction. I love that. I really like taking a religious objection stance to it. When I came to Florida, I had no idea that it was a real ID. When I was in California and I had to renew my license, I had a choice and I went for the regular license. When I came to Florida, I just assumed, and that was my bad, that it was a regular license because they didn't ask me. They didn't say, do you want this one or that one? And being in Florida, the freedom state, it didn't occur to me that they would be on board with this. So I love the idea of having a religious conviction against that. I would give that a try. And just state it as such, that you prayed about it and God told you not to participate. It's likely that they will say, well, that's okay. And then you can't travel. It was like at the employers where they said, oh, you don't have to get the jab. No, it's not required. But if you don't get it, you can't come to work. You can't work here anymore. It's your choice. Well, that's not a choice, and we know that it's not. So thank you, everybody, for being on board. I will continue to look at your messages. If you would like to participate in the Substack, that's peggyhall.substack.com, and you can also add your comments there. I am opening that up to non-subscribers as well in terms of leaving comments, because I think this issue is so important that we need to hear from people, everyone. And I thank all of you for being on board. I appreciate you. Big shout out to the moderators. They keep that stream flowing. And thank you to all of you for being critical thinkers. There's a lot of news to cover this week. I do want to talk about, so many things. And drop a comment also. Let me know what's top on your mind and what you would like me to cover. All right, friends, thank you again. Have a wonderful evening. Let me know what happens at the DMV. Check out those resources I have for you.